Well, hello there, and thanks for stopping by my new YouTube channel, Paul's 3D Experience. This is just going to be an introduction video to tell you about myself and my history doing things artistic and such, and why I created this channel to share my experiences with other people who are working with digital art and animation, and particularly, at least at this point, Daz Studio, although that may certainly someday branch out into other software. Just to give you a quick as possible introduction here, I have another channel on YouTube that has been my main focus for the past 6 years or so, and I'm hesitant to tell you what it is because you might hit the stop button right now. I hope you do not, though, because this is part of the story. I have lived in this car for the past 7 years, and my channel is called the Homeless Consultant channel on YouTube, and there I have told the story about how I was, more or less made homeless and maintained as homeless by the state of Minnesota for the past 7 years off camera, how the media will not talk about it, and what I've learned in those 7 years about the way that the homeless in the United States of America are the forgotten, left for dead class. The way that social services is a complete and utter total fraud, which only keeps people in social services from becoming homeless themselves, but it doesn't help us one bit, while it costs you a lot of money in taxes. That's what that channel's about. It can get a little dark at times, as you can probably tell. And that channel is very depressing for me. And I try to inject all kinds of humor and arts into that channel. I encourage you to watch the trailer. I'll put a link to the trailer for that. It's about 7 minutes long. And you'll see I have done my best from living in a car to add all kinds of humor and artistic adventures into it. It's very difficult, though, when you live in a car. But that's what that channel's about. I don't want to go there here. So let me give you a bit of the history of why I'm into 3D art and animation at this time. If you go way back to when I was a little kid, just as far back as I can remember, 3 years old probably, I remember I would use my closet as a stage, and I would, put on puppet shows and acting and ventriloquism, or I should say ventriloquism. I can't do it anymore. And I had a little Charlie McCarthy doll and all that. And then I started playing drums when I was, 6 or 7, and then guitar, and then over the years add all these instruments and things like that, and just my upbringing was a 50-50 between arts and sciences. I also loved science. And as I grew up doing all these artistic things, I loved it very much. It would have been wonderful to make a career out of it. But the experts, they'd have you fill out the little surveys in school every year, and then the counselor, who really didn't know your name unless they looked it up on the paper there, would tell you what you should do for a living. And they led me off toward the sciences. So that's what I did. And fast forward 9 years until, when I was way too deep into graduate school, and I had long since realized that academia was a fraud, it's a cult, and that there really is no such thing as legitimate science anymore. It's all politically, socially motivated junk science, which I find offensive in the extreme, because I love science. I love the genuine search for truth. What is? Not what I want to be, but what is in this world. So my career path took me to nowhere. And it certainly didn't take me to a good salary, because first and foremost, I was in the sciences because I wanted to know the truth. And everyone around me in academia, in business, every area of life I encountered as I got older, I was realizing these people could care less about truth. They're about making money. They're about social agendas. They're about they hate this group or they want to promote this group. It has nothing to do with objective truth. And again, I don't want to get into that either. But my point is that my life path went kind of from the arts, and it started to focus for that decade where I was in college into sciences. So I studied physics and astronomy, computer science. In the end, I ended up with a computer science degree. And then when I got out and I realized that, what the workplace was like, and I regretted that I didn't just stay in the arts. If I was going to be this poor anyway, I might as well be a starving musician. I would love it a lot more being up there playing drums, or I don't know if I would dare play guitar on stage, but drums I'll play on stage. I'm not afraid. And so after college, I went through another 10 years or so where I fought just bloody battles, losing teeth, just bloody battles against all the institutions that had lied to me growing up, going all the way back to Carl Sagan with his Cosmos series, which was full of lies and really sent me on a path toward something other than reality. And after I did that, fighting the student loan racketeering industry, fighting just all these corrupt institutions, junk science, academia, the cult of academia, just duking it out with them and losing because I'm just one person, I moved to Minnesota 15 years ago after all that. And I said, I'm done with this. I'm done with that. I'm going back to what I did when I was a kid. I'm going to go sit in my closet and I'm going to make puppet shows or something equivalent. So I spent about 7-8 years building a home recording audio video studio. So, even today, this computer here has more on it than the Beatles ever had at Abbey Road. Way more. And I built this home studio for video audio. I was learning along the way. I already knew how to do the audio. I've always followed the audio back from the 80s with MIDI and everything. So, and I play instruments. So, yeah. As I built the studio up, though, when I became homeless, there was a triad of things that happened. One was my neighbors over the 3 to 5 years before I lost my place were just viciously, violently terrorizing and tormenting me. And not because they were singling me out or anything, but just because I was realizing that's how Minnesotans function, especially with people who are not from Minnesota. They're very passive-aggressive. So the building would shake and people would be screaming and just boom all day and night. Anyway, at the end of that, I ended up just curled on a ball on the floor. And that was number one. Number two is my landlord, and from my landlord to attorneys to the police to the city council, county, all the way up to the governor and the attorney general, not one of them in the state of Minnesota would do the job they accepted a paycheck for. For example, the police had noise ordinances right there. That's their sworn duty to uphold these. They refused. My landlord, he wrote the lease. The lease had a huge paragraph saying you can't do this to your neighbors. He refused to enforce that. All the way up to the attorney general's office, governor, frankly beyond. I went to my members of Congress. Not one of them cared or would do anything about it. And the interesting thing was, you could see instances of where they would do the same thing for somebody else, for a native Minnesotan, for example. I was a transplant, and Minnesota functions like a cult. That's what Minnesota Nice is, by the way. Anyway, again, that's where the Homeless Consultant channel comes in. But the third thing that came in was my landlord, because he refused to do his job that I paid him $60,000 for, he performed what's called a constructive eviction, which is basically telling me to get out because he doesn't want to deal with the complaint. He never even tried to deal with the complaint at all. And that's illegal. It's illegal. And I should have been able to sue him into the ground for it, but Minnesota attorneys are lazy bums. They don't do anything unless they make money out of it. So that was the second part. The third part was right at that time, my international employer, which was in the medical industry, a new CEO came in, and he was a Minnesotan. And again, I'm going back to the Homeless Consultant channel where it tells you about what a danger to society Minnesota is, this cult that runs this place. But this Minnesotan, one of the first things he did was fire a whole bunch of his very best employees because he didn't have the foggiest idea how this company even worked. He wasn't that bright. So he fired me and a whole bunch of other people with no advance notice. You put those three things together, and given, you know, again, at the time I was laying on the floor, I was scared to go home. I was terrified. I would feel the adrenaline and start sweating as I pull into my building. Just didn't want to go into my own home, my castle, because these people were just so violent, just so vicious. I couldn't sleep in there. My pets were freaking out. It was horrible. And I would just end up on a ball on the floor. I couldn't even use my bathroom. Couldn't use my living room. Couldn't use my kitchen. Couldn't cook nutritious food. It was horrifying. And nobody would do anything about it, even when it was their job. You put those three things together and you end up with me after all that, 8 years of building that studio, before I even really got to do anything with it, bam, I end up living in this car. And this is where I've been the last 7 years. Because after that, I had the adventure, again, on the Homeless Consultant channel, of trying to go through social services and trying to, you know, learning certain things about what homelessness is in America. One of my videos is a homeless man's challenge to Colin Kaepernick. You know, the guy with the big hair who gets paid millions of dollars to throw a ball back and forth while I work for a living full-time doing something productive. He's going out there just blah, 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 just shooting off his mouth about how black people are oppressed in America. So I made this long video showing, well, how many black astronauts can you find? I can count several here. How many black attorneys can you find? I lost count. How many black doctors? I lost count. How many black Nobel Prize winners? I lost count. How many black this, that, and the other thing? How many black presidents of the United States? You see, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of oppression there. It seemed more like the individuals weren't really working that hard, just like whites or anyone else, right? It's some work harder than others. But he was focusing on one thing, and he thought there was this big systemic racism. And I pointed out, well, how many homeless astronauts are there? 0. How many homeless attorneys are there? 0. How many homeless doctors and surgeons are there? 0. How many homeless elected officials are there who have power over other people? 0. How many homeless president of the United States are there? We haven't really had one since Thomas Paine, one of the American founders, the homeless founder, essentially. And as I put in that video, homeless people are systemically kept from getting out of it in America. Now, if you have family and friends and people who can help you, yeah, you can get out of it. It's not like they put a ball and chain and put you in a detention camp if you're homeless. But things like any paperwork that you fill out, I can't fill out without committing a felony. For example, filing my taxes, renewing my driver's license, getting a post office box. All of these things require you to certify under penalty of perjury a felony that all information is true and correct. Well, first is your name, second is what is your address. Homeless people don't have an address. And it just gets worse and worse from there. Excuse me, I have to look at something beeped over there. So, over the next 7 years while I was in this car, I did the Homeless Consultant channel, which was exposing all of that. If you wonder why 1% of the population in America, 4 million people, is homeless, that's a lot of the reason. A lot of those people, it's after they become homeless that they lose all hope, because nobody cares about the homeless if they live or die. Most people hate them. I came up with a term for that, osteo-phobia. It's the equivalent of racism toward homeless people. And it's deadly. The mortality rate for homeless people is twice that of housed people. And as I went through that channel, I would try to inject humor in music. I did music videos. I did photoshopping, very simple photoshopping type kind of things in my videos there. But if you can believe it, a couple of Minnesota stalkers sabotaged the Homeless Consultant channel. Now I only get like 40 after 6 years and 250 videos. I only get about 40-50 views per video there. And yet these Minnesotans are so scared that the whole world at large is going to find out what a cult runs this place, how vicious and mean they are toward transplants, towards people who are not part of their good old boy system, that they've actually spent their time sabotaging. They subscribe to the channel. Whenever I post a video, literally within 120 seconds, they go in and put thumbs down on it. even if the video is 2 hours long. So they're clearly not watching the video. And they've just sabotaged it. So it's pointless for me to do that anymore. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about me, whether I live or die. And as I put in my last few videos there, where I talked about how the state of Minnesota murdered me, I'm destroyed, folks. The 7 years I've been living in this car has absolutely destroyed my body. And I'm going to die young. Minnesota murdered me. And if the world doesn't want to hear that, and they don't want to hear that story, and they want to go on believing that a group of people from which we get lawyers and doctors and attorneys and Nobel Prize laureates and presidents and heads of the United Nations, people who have power over other people, if you're going to have people going on and saying that they are the oppressed class and nobody even mentions the homeless, what's the point of me being the only person who does that? I need a new video channel. I need a new outlet for the real me. The real me is a happy-go-lucky, humorous, fun-loving person who's fascinated with cool, neat, new stuff. Loves to learn. And that's what this channel's for. So if you care about the other stuff, go visit Homeless Consultant. But I'm here to talk about 3D. Before I became homeless, because, I've had all these projects all my life. I've always been project-oriented. I've written books. I've done all these things. And those books were the hardest things I've ever done. One of them was, I think, 3 years, if I remember, 3 years of diligent research. That's when I stopped watching television. I never watched television again just because I was working so hard on the book. And I'm glad. Now I can't even look at television. It just makes me want to vomit because I see how they're manipulating you and how insulting it is to your intelligence. But back then I didn't. Being project-oriented, about the last thing I did along those lines before I lost my home was I bought a program called Anime Studio Pro. And I only got to use it a brief period, for 2 to 4 weeks maybe. And it was fun. It was really neat. It was 2D animation. And I learned about bones. And I was just learning new things about what this animation field is about, which I'd never known before. And it was really interesting, and I knew I was going to take that somewhere. But then I lost my home and everything. I lost everything I owned, everything I worked my life for. Had to sell everything off or throw it in the trash or give it away and start all over. Fast forward several years, 5 years maybe, 6 years. Around 2020, I ran across Reallusion's website. And Reallusion makes iClone, Character Creator, Cartoon Animator, and Crazy Talk, although they've now discontinued all support for Crazy Talk. I bought Crazy Talk, and what Crazy Talk is it's a really neat lip sync. You can use photo to create a character's face, a 2D face, and then you can add audio to it and it will lip sync, and it does a pretty good job, and you can go in and tweak it. It's a great program. I don't know why Reallusion stopped supporting it and selling it. I don't understand. Although they do have the fundamentals of that ingrained in their other stuff, iClone and everything, but they don't have a just simple program for that one specific purpose. I wish they had not stopped developing Crazy Talk. But when I got it, I used it in a video immediately in the Homeless Consultant channel where I had an imposter sitting in the seat telling how great Minnesota was and basically the myth of Minnesota Nice, portraying that. And then the real me opens up the door and pulls him out and bloodies him up a bit and gets into the car. And it was fun. Yeah, it was really fun. So, of course, that took me to the 3D animation, which is, like Cartoon Animator. And over the course of about a year, 1 year later, which I think was 2020 at that point, like September 2020, I then bought Cartoon Animator. Now that one's hard to learn because the problem is, and again, I'm trying so hard not to just reference Homeless Consultant channel, but for this intro I have to, folks, to let you know where I'm coming from. One of the things I've talked about in the Homeless Consultant channel is how when you live in a car like this, my productive hours are cut almost completely gone. When I had a home, every moment that I was home was productive. I didn't watch television. I didn't vegetate. I didn't need much sleep, maybe 4 hours a day, with 1 day for catch up every week. And all those dozens and hundreds of hours every week, I would be productive. I would be working on projects, be learning, be experiencing, be gaining experience, be developing, creating things. In this car, I can't do it. I mean, I get a few hours a day if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky, a few hours a day. And that's for the last 7 years. So being homeless has just ended my creative productivity, except for the Homeless Consultant channel, which is probably why I put so much into it, even though nobody was watching it. Well, to learn something like Cartoon Animator takes a fair amount of effort. There's a pretty steep learning curve. And being in this car, I just don't have the time to focus on it. For example, I can't see this screen really right now at all. It's sunny out. I can't see the screen during the daytime, so I can't do anything during the daytime. I can't leave the car because the car's my home. If anything happens to this car, I'm literally living in a ditch and I'm a dead man. So I have to sit in this seat for the last 7 years, which is why my body's destroyed. I mean, I can't even walk inside to use the bathroom without the peril of someone stealing this computer, or basically stealing my life or stealing my home. So I couldn't learn Cartoon Animator. The learning curve was just a little unusual for me. I really want to. But what happened was that took me into learning about Character Creator and iClone. But here's the trick. It took me a year after that, from September 2020 to September 2021, 1 year just to learn what 2 Reallusion products actually are. That's how bad Reallusion's website is and how bad their company is at selling their product. And if you look at the Homeless Consultant channel, the first several videos I made were actually about business. And specifically, they were about ethical business, because my background has a lot of business in it, and business ethics is very important to me. So I was really offended by Reallusion, how they seem to be focused on selling this content, and their products are almost incidental, and yet they charge an arm and 2 legs and your dog for their software. Very expensive software. Now, I ran across Daz Studio really early on in this, but they required you to register just to try the software. And folks, I don't know about you, but I have given my personal information to so many companies just to be able to download a trial version, and 5 minutes later I realized that their software is junk. And all my information's out there. I just blew Daz off as pointless from that. And it was almost a year later before I finally did, from watching videos and things, I realized that Daz seems to be at least legit. And I finally downloaded it, and I got fairly productive with it almost immediately. And I was going to get Reallusion software. I was going to get Character Creator, Headshot, and iClone. But I just really felt dirty being on their website. It was filthy. Reallusion is very manipulative. They seem to focus everything on manipulating their customers instead of informing them and teaching them. There was nothing to teach you. Just the most common question on there is, what does iClone do? What does Character Creator do? I mean, they can't even explain what their own products do. I mean, it's these little descriptions in their videos. You go on their videos on YouTube, and it's just somebody quickly moving their mouse around, clicking all over, and music in the background, and nobody even talking or telling you what they're doing. And to this day, I wonder, how does a company like that stay in business? And yet their software seems to be really, really good. I don't have a problem with their software. I liked it. I got Headshot and Character Creator let me get cooking right away. But then I look at things like 3D Exchange and how it doesn't seem to really work, even though it's very expensive. So if you want to create characters in Daz or something and move them over to iClone, it seems to be extremely difficult to do. And if you want to move stuff from iClone into, Unreal Engine or something, very difficult to do. And part of it is Reallusion's fault. Part of it is the industry's fault for not having standards. Again, I come from music background, where MIDI is a standard. Back around 1982 or 84, they came up with the MIDI standard, and they keep it very rigid, and that allows compatibility throughout the whole industry. Huge industry in music, plugins and instruments and hardware. The 3D animation world does not have that. So there's all these different file formats, and these are just things that I'm learning as I go. Different file formats, the conversions don't work. It's very frustrating. So you pretty much have to settle on one platform and then sit down on your knees and pray that you'll be able to integrate what you're doing with something else. Now, because I tried Daz and I realized, hey, I can do something with this. The problem was they didn't have very good animation tools at all, whereas iClone is spectacular animation tools. But iClone, Reallusion, their content is, 1/100th of what Daz has available. I mean, it's just repetition of the same, and it's extraordinarily expensive. I mean, for a bundle of clothing that I can get at Daz, maybe I just got one the other day, it was like $12. No, I'm sorry. I got the fashion bundle, I think for $22, but this thing came with like 16 different clothing packages, and they were all very versatile with D-Force. $22. At Reallusion, one dress, one suit might cost $50. One. So, between the way that Reallusion just made me feel filthy inside, the way they do business, it was just so grotesque, the way that they're trying to manipulate their customers the whole time, and they don't even tell you what their own products do or teach you about them. I had to go with Daz. So, in about September again, it was around Thanksgiving of 2021, I kind of committed to Daz. Now, I'd still like to get the Reallusion stuff at some point for the power of their animation. I do want to do the animation. It's very important to me to integrate it with my videos on Homeless Consultant channel or elsewhere. I also want to, I've made music videos, in the past for bands and things. This can be a tremendous boon to that. So I'm trying to learn, marketable skills that will help me as well. Help me get out of this mess. But to have fun while doing it. Now, so what happened was when I committed to Daz around Thanksgiving, I had to start learning how the Daz store worked, and I had to start learning how Daz works. And Daz is difficult. On this little computer, with my aging eyes and what has happened to my body being sitting in this seat, when I'm not at work sitting in an office, I'm sitting, like as if I was in a wheelchair for 7 years. My whole body is atrophied. My eyesight's just gone. And I have to put these on all the time for my videos. These dollar store glasses. And, I could barely see Daz Studio. Everything is just microscopic. And I just squint, and I actually get these little magnifiers to try to see what it even is. And I can't expand on several monitors to get all these panes spread out. So it's been very slow going with Daz. But I like it overall. And now I understand it better. I made a video back then on the Homeless Consultant channel, which was talking about Reallusion versus Daz. At the time, sorry for the spitting. At the time, I gave Daz very high marks compared to Reallusion, especially in the ethics department. And I would like to rescind that officially at this point. Now that I've dealt with Daz for several months at their store, committed to using Daz, Daz is just as it rhymes with wheezy in the way that they do business. Very manipulative, not as much as Reallusion, and Daz does do things better in the sense that you know what you're getting, and their prices are, when you know how to shop there, are much, much, much better. But something happened at the beginning of January which just really sent my opinion of Daz, flushing down the toilet. And what it was they had a mega sale, and yeah, they have sales all the time. If you deal with Daz, you know that. I've learned that. They have sales all the time, including big, huge, deep discount sales. The problem is that when you click on the banner on the website where it says sale, and you scroll down to the bottom, you scroll down and you look for when it expires. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, this one said, I believe it says it ended on January 20th. Okay? And that was about 5-6 days away, something like that. Quite long for a Daz sale. But don't forget, I work for a living, 40 hours a week. It's very difficult. The hours around work are spent trying to somehow maintain my hygiene in a state that closed all of its hygiene facilities for homeless men so they could build a football stadium. Right? So I have to somehow try to go into work without smelling like a sewer. And then when I leave work, I have to somehow procure food and try to, in minus 20 degree temperatures, not die in this car overnight. And I can't run the computer in the day, really, because you can't see the screen. And if I run this at night, the light of the screen attracts all kinds of creepy people who want to come over and molest me. It attracts gangbangers who come over and might want to steal my computer. It attracts weirdos. It attracts the police. It attracts all kinds of people. So there's only that little window when I can really use this thing in the early morning, dawn and dusk, when the light is just right. And I work for a living, full time. So when I was going through that mega sale, I put literally every moment I had that I could possibly be productive, I put into sorting and trying to get the best deals in the Daz store. And the reason is because I've got to save money. I don't have a lot of money. But I need these things in order to use Daz to tell, for example, this story. I was thinking of trying to do a visual novel, or I might do a more video route. But one reason I'm into this 3D stuff is to try to tell the story of what happened to me and what 4 million homeless people are going through, while American society doesn't even acknowledge that they exist. They're so oppressed. They're like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. Every once in a while they'll talk about them as the homeless, and they'll point out people living under underpasses in Los Angeles. But, they'll point out those many thousands of people, but they won't point out the millions of homeless people who work for a living, who are sane, who are sober, who are very well educated. America has the most well-educated homeless population in the world. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that because Americans don't care whether the homeless live or die, including me. That much I've learned over the last 7 years. The minute you tell someone you're homeless, just something switches in them, not in you. You're the same person. I'm the same person I was when I was a quasi-executive in the hotel industry way back when. I'm the same person I was then. I could sit in a boardroom and I could chat it up with millionaires, billionaires, some of the movers and shakers and Fortune 50 companies. No problem at all. I'm the same person. But if I just walk down and tell someone I'm homeless, all of a sudden something switches in their mind, and they look at the hair and they smell and they think, they don't realize the circumstances of it. Anyway, I'm getting off into that topic, but these are the stories I need to tell with 3D. Okay? So to get that, I have to have content that will allow me to do that. For example, this car has been my home, my office, my bathroom. It has been everything. My transportation has been everything to me for the last 7 years, and it's fallen apart. By the way, it's pretty much dead. As am I. And to tell this story, I have to have all these things. What about hair? Okay, my hair was. I clean up very nicely, and traditionally I have a very conservative look to me. Now, between COVID, the fact that Minnesota barbershops are just a nightmare. There's nothing barbershop-ish at all about it, where you sit down and you chat and you're friendly and nice. It's just, Minnesotans are a strange breed if you're not a Minnesotan. If you're an outsider, it's like going into Scientology when you're not a Scientologist. You're an outsider and you're going to be, more or less condemned. And so I was coming up with the hair for this and the hair for, when I was, had the conservative haircut. So if I'm gonna do that, I have to get the very best deals I can. And a lot of these things are bundles. If I have bundles that are, clothing and environments, props, all the things I'm going to need to tell my story and anything else I want to do with this, I've got to get the best deals I can. So when they had this mega sale, I put every moment I could into that. I put every moment of the day into this. And I was, I was narrowing it down, and this is going to sound crazy, but in the cart, I had $1,100 in the cart. Now, of course, I was going to pare that way down. I wasn't going to spend $1,100. I don't have $1,100. But that's what I'm talking about. You get it, I mean, I got it down to $1,100, and then I was going to take it there because I had my 2 days off work before the 20th when this expired. So I was going to pare it down to something essential, like $200-$300. And that would give me a great deal on some stuff I need to tell these stories. And what happened? Well, I mean, like my last day of work before I had my 2 days off, the sale just suddenly ends, just out of the clear blue sky. It was like the 17th or the 18th. But on Dad's store, it said it ends on the 20th. So all that work I did was for nothing, because all the prices just went back to totally random. Well, how do you function in a situation like that? How can I plan? How can I shop? How can I get the best deals? I mean, this is crazy. If these things are going to be in flux like that fast, and you can't even rely on the dates they give, plus there was something else that was happening. Every once in a while they would have a sale, and it would show, like when you search on things, it would show the search results, and it might say $1.99. You click add to cart, and you look at your cart, and in there, instead of $1.99, it's like $4.99 or $8.99 or $22.95. Okay, so how do you shop if you don't really know what the prices are? It's just totally random. It's like, I like this item, I don't know what the price is, let me put it in the cart and find out, oh, that's the price. At least for now. Maybe by the time I'm ready to hit submit, it will change again. Okay, so that's when my opinion of Daz went straight down the toilet. Okay, they have a responsibility. Now, Daz doesn't really talk about their product either. They don't really teach you how Daz Studio works. I mean, they do have a lot more going on than Reallusion by far. I'll give them credit there, but they're not focused on Daz Studio software. By the way, you see the police back there? When you're homeless, that's what you get. You see the police come by and check you out because you're in a rusted out car and you're sitting in your car all the time. They don't go up to all the people who sit in their cars on their cell phone for an hour. The people who pull in their nice shiny cars and they face me with their bright headlights pointing in my eyes for an hour or more, such as happened last night. The police will come by me and see what I'm about, but they never, ever go to those nice cars. That's what makes being homeless so different. So if Daz is going to focus also on selling content, and that's going to be their thing, we're going to sell content, and that's where we're going to make our money, fine. They have an obligation then to put the dates of when these sales end, or to clearly state, we're not telling you when it ends. Scarcity. Get it now before it's gone. But don't put a date there that is wrong. Because I wasted a week of my life, and a week of my life constitutes as much productive time. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? What I told you before, living in this car, I don't have, 120 hours of productive time every week. I have normally I have about 1 hour a day maybe if I'm lucky. And that isn't much because you gear up and then you have to ramp down again. Whereas if you have the full 8 hours, you can gear up and you can just get a lot done and then ramp down. When you're constantly stopping and starting, and plus I have things like you saw, the police driving by me. I have to stop because the police are constantly interrupting me. Come up, knock on my window when I'm sleeping or when I'm just doing something like this. Well, for all that effort I put into that and that mega sale was for nothing because they ended the sale early. So that's when I decided I'm going to do this channel. I'm going to create another channel. If I'm going to commit myself to doing this 3D and animation stuff, then I want to share my experiences with other people. And apparently, it is us against them. It shouldn't be that way. But apparently, Reallusion and Daz, their models are to sell content, and the products are incidental. And they don't really care. They just don't care. Well, if that's the case, what can I do? I'm going to have to learn this stuff by other means. So I started watching videos from other people, like IT Roy and Permian. So sorry I don't remember all the names here, but there's a lot of people doing good videos out there that help teach you specific tasks and functions. And I decided to create this channel to kind of share my experiences and to get away from the homeless consultant stuff and the homeless stuff altogether if I can, and start talking about more artsy-fartsy stuff. And share my experiences. And one thing I found from the time I was, a young child, was the best way to learn is to teach. So, because then when you're learning, you're always looking past the immediate thing that you're trying to learn. You're looking past it into, how will I explain this to others? And that means you're kind of, in your mind, you're using language to explain it to yourself repeatedly, because you're thinking, okay, I'm going to teach someone else. And when you do that, you help to learn it better and to reinforce it in your own mind. So, I've gone at this with that in mind. And with the Daz store, since that fiasco on the 20th, I have really reevaluated and revamped the way that I shop the Daz store. My next video here, or first real video on this channel, is probably going to be how to shop the Daz store, a master class in how to shop the Daz store without, going bankrupt in the process. There are tricks to it, but first and foremost, you have to understand what is going on with the Daz store. And I don't think, from what I could see in the forums, I'm not sure people quite get it. I don't think they quite understand just how manipulative this stuff is. These kinds of companies, they probably have psychologists on staff, statisticians. They've got people who are focused on manipulating, human manipulation. Something I have studied for 30 years. I know it inside out. I hate it. It's disgusting to manipulate another person for your gain and to their detriment. And I don't think a lot of people understand just how manipulative Reallusion and Daz really are. So I'm going to kind of explain with the Daz store. But, for example, just this morning I grabbed the Pack Rat storage for $5.99. So that's $6. So much of my story concerns storage. All my stuff now is in storage. I have another storage in California with everything to remember my family by. My family's gone. And I'm paying out the wazoo for that. So storage is a huge part of my story. For $6, I had to grab it. Again, I talked about the hair. I grabbed Felix hair today for $3.64. Felix hair and another one called Abraham hair. The two of those kind of sort of come close to emulating the ridiculous mess I have to wear here living in the car. Meanwhile, there's another one I haven't gotten yet because I'm following my rules, and I will grab it when the price is right. It's the hair that looks like my hair did when I could be the way I want to be, which was very short and conservative. And can you believe it, folks? It's called Paul's hair. Wow, interesting. So I'm not trying to, outdo IT Roy or Parmy or any of these other people. I can't. They're far ahead of me anyway. But I just want to make my contribution. That's what this channel's about. Make my contribution, and by watching my videos and watching theirs, we all kind of just learn more and grow, and we help to get over that hump together, that barrier that's created by these companies, Reallusion and Daz. They create a barrier by just they don't support their products. They're just selling content. They really don't support their product. So it's up to us to do it, apparently, and it's a shame. I wish who knows, maybe someday, I don't think I'm going to live long enough now. What's happened to me is going to cut my life very, very short, and I can feel it, but hopefully one day they will come up with something like a MIDI standard, and the industry will stick to it like glue, because it did wonders for the music industry. And I am, as a businessman and as someone who came out of the incredible standardization of MIDI and video standards and things, I am just shocked and horrified at what a mess the 3D and animation world is in terms of standardization. Hopefully somebody will fix that at some point. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. Well, maybe I will. Okay. So another reason I wanted to do this is because as I watch these videos from other people, I think, well, here's what I could contribute to that. For example, IT Roy did a video on how to buy a computer, presumably for rendering, but, for 3D work. And, it was very good. He's showing, current items. He's moving kind of fast, but he's putting together products and talking about how the jacked up prices, the artificially jacked up prices on GPUs is making it difficult. But one thing he said kind of, I don't know, I just couldn't quite go with it. He said that the GPU or the CPU doesn't really matter. It's the GPU that matters. And he's correct if you're only doing rendering. Like if you're setting up a computer and you're going to set up your renders on this machine and then you move them over here to actually create the render, yeah, he's correct. But if this is your computer and you're doing other things, I have to disagree on that, because you might add video production and it might use software that if it doesn't use your video card, like NVIDIA card or something, it might rely heavily on CPU for some functions. If you're doing audio production, like I do, that's not going to use a graphics card. That's audio. It's going to rely on your CPU. It's very important that you have a powerful CPU. In fact, when I'm talking to people about building an home audio studio, I tell them to get a gaming computer, because you need that kind of power. I mean, except for the graphics, but you need that kind of power for audio production. What if you want to maybe do fractal rendering? Okay, I mean, there aren't any really good renders out there. Mandelbulb, Mandelbarber 3D, those kinds of things. They're not exactly, kept up to date, so they're not exactly going to use the latest NVIDIA iRay necessarily. Those things rely quite a bit on CPU, or at least they might potentially. But also, what about in the future? What's going to come out? It's not always going to be, utilizing to the max your GPU. You should always have the most powerful CPU you can possibly get, and at least the opportunity to upgrade the RAM to a huge amount if you need to. So I kind of disagreed with him on that, unless, again, you're just creating a rendering machine. So, there's things like that I could add to it, but his video overall was very good, and he's able to make a video of him shopping these different places, Newegg and everything. Along those lines, if you have a Micro Center in your area, that's a pretty good place to go as well. So what I'm hoping is that through all these videos, watching what I do, watching what they do, we'll all just get better at this stuff and have more fun, build some marketable skills maybe, who knows, maybe make some money. But in the end, it's all about expressing yourself, the art and everything, right? See if I have anything else for you here. So I guess, I don't really say this on the Homeless Consultant channel, but yeah, I will here. Since this is kind of specific, if this is an interest of yours, if you're using DAZ or even Reallusion, or if you're just into 3D and animation and all that, please subscribe to the channel. Unsubscribe if you don't like what comes, but subscribe to it and, do the things. Put the like button, the thumbs up, leave some comments. If I ever say something that isn't correct, go ahead and correct me in the comments. And if you have additional tips and tricks to add that other viewers will benefit from, put them in the comments, please. It's got, in this particular case, it is more of a community. Homeless Consultant channel is kind of me broadcasting. This is part of a community, so please, let's join forces here and try to overcome the evil corporate entities that seem to run it right now. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll leave you with my very first render, such as it was. I'll probably improve it later, but this is the first one I came up with. I call it, what did I call it? I call it Entropy in Paradise. Happy rendering, everybody. Thanks for watching.